When that California dream was reality, it's when you had people coming together, and that's what's lacking. And I'm like, I'm going to reach across the aisle and let's start one by one, if we have to, bringing balance back. We all want the same thing. So to me, relationships are the number one thing up there, and it's amazing what you can get done.
Laurie, it's great to have you on back. Welcome back.
Thank you. It's great to be here again.
Laurie, we want to talk to you about your role as a public servant. Why did you get into this?
I grew up in Wisconsin. I'm a Packer fan all the way, and I had the opportunity to come out to California a couple of times. Actually, I saved up my babysitting money and flew out in the 70s and stayed with some neighbors and fell in love with California and Long Beach. And so I knew when I graduated from high school, I wanted to come out and live there and go to school there. So obviously I worked full time once I hit 18, but I was a car hop at A&W, waitress, and bought myself a Cutlass Supreme for $2,000, drove out there, I brought my parakeet with me, lived in Long Beach, and I went to community college because I had to wait for residency. And do you know back then community college was, I think, like $25 a class?
Yeah, it was very cheap.
Just unbelievable. Good. But I was able to actually work two jobs. I was a gift wrapper and I was a waitress. So I could, afford to have a roommate and work hard and go to school. It was that California dream. And so I had the opportunity. And if you worked hard, and I come from a family where the money wasn't there, 5 kids, they couldn't afford to pay for school, but they allowed us to have the opportunity that if you worked hard, you could succeed. And those are the values that I brought here, and giving back to your community. So graduated from college there, and I got my first job at the Ritz-Carlton located in Dana Point, managing restaurants. And so that's what brought me to Orange County. And I got a studio in San Clemente, just fell in love with Orange County. And then I moved to Dana Point. I met my husband when he was working at the Marriott Laguna Cliffs. And then we ended up getting a condo in Laguna Niguel, and Laguna Niguel has been home since '95. And so I got involved with the chamber because I started my own business too, an event company. And so I started as an ambassador, volunteering. I joined the Lions Club and helped, like collecting glasses and doing fundraisers. And I just realized what a great community. Laguna Niguel is all about volunteers. I mean, that's really what makes this city. And I realized that, I want to live here. I want to be able to retire here. And that's what's so important is we've had such great leadership, not only in my city, but in my district. And so I thought it was important. And so I got very involved. I got onto the Traffic and Transportation Commission for the city. And then from there, I had some people come up saying, we'd like you to run for city council. And I realized we've had such great leadership. I mean, we were always a city that had an incredible reserve. They paid cash for everything. They paid cash for their first city hall. We paid cash for all these projects. And I'm like I need to be able to make sure that we've got great leadership. And so in following their footsteps, and we always said, it's a great city. I knock on doors and I'm like, what is it you'd like to see? And they're like, we love everything except we need more restaurants, And I'm like, okay. So that was the worst of the worst. And it just showed you that years and years of good leadership is what creates a great city and a place to call home. So I ran in 2012 and I won, and I ran again in 2016. So I served 8 years, and I had an opportunity to be a mayor 2 times. But I also realized watching the city what was happening at the state and the local control that they were taking away from us, but putting a lot of mandates. And again, one size doesn't fit all. What might work well in San Francisco or LA with your high density areas doesn't work the same if you're in small suburban communities. And so I joined the League of Cities, where I served as president in Orange County. I got on the board, and I had the opportunity to serve as chair in transportation, public works, and communication. And so I got to go up to Sacramento and really learn policy and be part of this is not going to help the city. We need to be able to have a say, and who knows their city best? The people that live there. So I just thought it was so important. What was great too is I love to solve problems. I think that's why I got into doing something like this, because the simplest things that we may think could be, the most frustrating things for others. For example, I'd get a call saying, Laurie, every time I go to work, I get stopped at that light. It just stays red. There's nobody coming, and I'm late every day, or I'm late getting my kids to school. And it was like, okay. I said, no problem. I knew I could pick up the phone, call Public Works, and say, most likely that light's out of sync. Let's take a look at it. And the problem was solved. And yet, you know what? That meant so much to them because their voices were heard, and we were able to solve their problem. Something that, will make their life better, make them, get to work on time, let their kids get to school on time. And to have that opportunity, to me, it's like a service. And I am, I'm a civil servant. My job is to serve those that I represent. And there's always that step where it starts out here. It's the people, and then it's us. They're the ones that elect us. They're the ones that allow us to actually have this opportunity. So when I finished those 8 years, I was asked to go to the state level assembly. And it's a completely different way of procedure, because that's policy, and that ours mainly is just making sure infrastructure and public safety is always number one, no matter what.
When you're in the city as a mayor or city
Right,
council.
exactly. You're not doing a lot of ordinances. You're not doing bills. It really is making sure that you have the resources for those that live there, making sure that businesses have the opportunity, all local issues. But when you get up there, you realize that policy is very important, and you have to make sure that what's done there is going to be beneficial and not harmful. And I think that was probably one of the neatest things, because I learned how a bill becomes a bill. And there's such a huge process. And also, because I'm on so many different committees, it could be government organizations, it could be transportation, it could be health. You learn a little bit about everything, because we have sometimes, you could have up to, 4,000 bills being introduced a year. Or I should say, like 2,500 bills being within a term, 4,000. So you've got to know, information on this. So I've been able to learn, what the issues are, and I've become very passionate about things I never thought I would, be passionate about. And health's such a great thing. Safety, no matter what, is always my priority. And when you take a note, that really is our job, is to make sure everyone's safe. If you don't feel safe, there's no peace of mind where you live. Your businesses won't be safe. Your kids won't be safe at school. Going shopping, we need to make sure that that's a priority, because that affects everything we do every day. I just also realized when you get up there is not a lot of people know what assembly member does, and for good reason. They know the term Senate because they hear it on the TV when you're looking at DC and federal. But I realized when I got up there that it is my job to make sure that everybody knows what's happening, because everyone has busy lives. You don't really see the news talking about Sacramento.
The state level issues, right?
Exactly.
State level issues are not really
No, they're not put out
much.
there. You're seeing what's happening, federal wise. And I explain to people 90% of what happens to you and your family every day, from your children's education, your health, your businesses, your safety, all are decided at that Capitol in Sacramento, by assembly members and senators. And when you're looking at how our state is doing on affordability, homelessness, crime, those decisions and those policies are what makes where we're at. And so it's important to know what's happening up there, because otherwise, come January 1st, after the governor signs these bills into law, then you find out, oh, you're paying for this, or now we have to do this, or this is a new regulation. So making sure that people know ahead of time what's going down, so that their voice can matter, because I'm one voice for my district. I have 500,000 people that I represent. Their voices make a much bigger difference when, people are hearing from them. And so I have a thing called Davies Dispatch that goes out to the district, and we just put items once a week, like one topic, so they're not overwhelmed. But it might be, something that there's policy that could affect their kids' education, or it could affect their taxes, or it could affect the price of gas going up. And we put it out there and we say, this is the committee it's going to. These are the people that sit in the committee. Here are their office numbers and their emails, please, this is how it's going to address you and affect you, please let them know. And that way they're becoming part of this. They're starting to understand more. And I tell you what, it does make a difference. And so for me, being able to get out there, and I'm all about leave your party and your politics at the door. You know what? It's all about policy. And that's what people want to hear. And it's really refreshing when I go out and I speak, because I'm speaking to everyone. And I'm talking about policy that's going to affect them and their families. And when you focus on that, it's amazing how people's ears perk up and they're like, it's so nice just and refreshing to have somebody tell us what's going on without pointing fingers. And the more I see it, the more that's what those that live in the state want to hear. They just want to know the facts so they can make the decision. I'm not there to tell them how to vote. I'm there to give them the information so that they can make a common sense decision.
How do you keep going? Do you have any sense of inspiration that comes from somewhere or someone? How do you get inspired to continue?
I am the energized bunny. I don't know, I've always had it, and I don't drink caffeine, but I just get very policy, I know it's silly,
Were you
but
fact-checking that you wanted decaffeinated tea today?
Yeah, exactly. So, you know what? It's a passion that's been put in me. That's why service is so important to me in this state. I'm not leaving this state. We're watching people leave right and left because they can't afford to live here. They can't afford to go to school here. Our corporations, we lost $30 billion total last year of money that won't come back, of people that have moved and gone to other states and taken that revenue, to other states. And I will fight here because people are like, how do you do it? I'm like going, I will fight because I got that chance for the California dream, and we can have that happen again. It's all about the policy. So we just need people to have a better idea of what's happening and make sure they have the right people in there that are going to support policy that's going to give that dream back to our youth, because they don't have it. When I talk to them, hope is gone. They're like, even if I can afford to go to school here, I can't afford to live here, even if I have 2, 3, 4 roommates. And to me, that is the most devastating thing, because I've had that. And that's what keeps me going, is that I will fight for your children, for our nieces and nephews, for the next generation to come, so they can have that opportunity that I was given and a lot of others were given, to be able to succeed in this state, because it really is the best state. I mean, and I love Wisconsin, but I'm not a winter girl. I will stay here. My husband's from Michigan, and again, it's like, we're not going anywhere. We will fight to the end here.
Now, in terms of being in this public service role as a mayor or as an assembly, have you faced challenges and you were able to overcome them?
There's always challenges. And especially when you do what I do, I think number one is in the assembly, we only serve 2 years at a time. And so you're constantly moving. You also have elections. And
you have to do a lot of fundraising.
You have to do everything. You're multitasking. And it's funny because that's probably one of the first things that people come up to me and say, why is it that you have to do this every 2 years? Every 4 years, like senators. And I mean, I think it would be great to see that, because when you first get in there, you don't know the system. You learn. Like I said, this is a brand new process.
Does it take a year or 6 months to figure out?
Yeah, it definitely does, because you're walking through it for the first time. And also for me, when I went up there, I said, I want to get things done. And so I think having my hospitality background and not being afraid to reach out, having the experience of being mayor and always having like coffee chats and just going out and listening to the community, I made it a point, and I sat down with 80 assembly members, sat down with every single one of them. I had meetings back to back. Sometimes I'd have 14 meetings and just say, can I have 30 minutes of your time in the very beginning? I'm like, tell me about, your passion, what policy are you looking at? And I talked about, the policy I was looking at, and my policy comes from my district. My agenda is actually their agenda, and so I would talk about the issues that we had, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I love what you're doing. I would love to jump on your bill, because you can, co-author a bill, which means you're just supporting that as well. And working across the aisle, to me, is the most important thing. So, I did that, and we were able to get great bills passed, bipartisan, 100% voted unanimously in every committee, and then signed into law. And I'm like, that's how we know it's good policy. If it's 100% vote from both parties, it's not doing damage to anyone. you know what, it's actually great policy. And that's the way I've always continued. And, I did the same, sitting down with the senators, because your bills have to go from the Assembly, you get those out, then they go through the same process of going through the committees, then going through the floor in the Senate, and then they go through appropriations, and also making sure that these bills aren't going to cost a lot, because obviously we have a deficit, and there's a lot of good policy you can put out there that doesn't have to cost an arm and a leg. And so we were able this year, 4 bills have been passed already, signed into law, and we have 3 more on the governor's desk that are just good common sense policies, but public safety, working with our DAs and our law enforcement on sex trafficking, domestic violence, fentanyl, which to me was actually something that I became very passionate about when I started serving locally, because I realized how many parents were losing their kids at that time to opioids, and then fentanyl comes forward, and I said, I want to go up and I want to help when it comes to policy, and we were able to get really the first law that made it mandated to have Narcan into these treatment centers, because a lot of these patients were actually overdosing. And then we realized with fentanyl that fentanyl is in everything now, unfortunately. It's coming across the border, it's being mixed up, and you don't know what you're getting. And especially these kids, they think that they're ordering it online and it's prescription, and obviously it's not. And to look at the number of kids that are overdosing, and young adults, and dads, and moms. And so we had an opportunity. Something, a simple fix like this is there are testing strips that you can test to see if there's fentanyl in the drug. Also, ketamine, which is a date rape drug, which is sadly used in many, many women, especially in college, been given that, and unfortunately then raped, because it's like a tranquilizer that they use on animals, vets do, where they're coherent, but they can't move, they can't talk. So we had these testing strips out there, but they couldn't be made to the public because they're under the paraphernalia code. What we needed to do is basically just remove them, and it took a lot of work, working with the DA in San Diego, working with different groups, and we were able to get that passed. That's huge, so people could sit there, and it goes both ways, but it's, if a parent found it or a kid had something, a pill, they could put that as basically a drop on paper and it turns a certain color. And someone going to the bar, say the young girls are going there, they're going to a party, and that's usually putting in their drink, is there's a straw you can take, you just put the straw into the drink and you drop it on like a coaster, it would turn a color if that ketamine, the date rape drug, is in there.
Wow, that's really good, yeah.
And so there's so much you can do, and saving lives, we're literally saving lives with that, and to have that opportunity and to work with others, you can't explain it, but it's just like I feel that I've just been blessed to be able to actually have this opportunity to do things like that.
Now, were you surprised at any moment when you obviously you went and reached out to everybody and you met with them? Were you surprised by
They were surprised. I think they were surprised, going, who wants to meet with me? Because unfortunately the atmosphere isn't always working across the aisle. People stay in their own sides, and they do what they want to do. And I'm like, that's not how we get things done. And if you look when our state, and again, I always revert back to that California dream. When that California dream was reality, it's when you had people coming together, when you had a balance, a government on both sides up there. And that's what's lacking. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to reach across the aisle, and let's start one by one, if we have to, bringing balance back and making sure that, we're all working together. And that's how you change policy. And so we have to bring balance back to California. And I can talk to a lot of people, and they're like, you're right, we do. We need to make sure that we have everybody at the table and not just one group making decisions. And there should never be a supermajority on either side. That's not good.
Now, did you, in this process of sitting with the other side, did you have any experiences that before going to assembly you might have thought, or a certain way of them, and then your opinion changed?
Absolutely. And, but I've also learned not to judge people by the labels that they put on. And so go in there open-minded, and, there are some that, like life, you're not going to agree on a lot of things. But there are a lot of things that, that we can agree upon. And so you're just like, all right, you know what, this is great. But we all have our own personal experiences, I realized. And that's what makes us who we are. That's what gives us our values and like the policy that we've got. That's, we all have reasons for it. And that's really what it's kind of reminded me. And I when I go in there going, you know what, we all want what's best for the state. You know what, I truly believe that. We have different ideas of how and what that is. I don't want somebody judging me because I have a certain letter behind my name. And that's what I really worked on, were relationships and going out to dinner with them or sitting down and having coffee. And, I've really gotten to have a lot of great friends. Some incredible assembly members are like, Nick's here, let's work on something with fentanyl that will do this. That will, help our students in school or make things available. And I'm like, let's do it, And so it brings the other side too, because a lot of them want that too. So sometimes you have to be the first to step out. It just brings people going, we all want the same thing. So to me, relationships are the number one thing up there. And it's amazing what you can get done when people see really who you are, how you're voting, and they trust you, and they're like, wow, we have a lot in common. Instead of, we have nothing in common, because unfortunately there are people that like to just put labels out there on both sides and decide who we really are and what our values are. And most of them are never correct.
How did you figure out to do that, to reach out to everybody? Obviously, this is something people don't do. Was there a reason you had this idea to reach out to everyone?
Well, that's something that, having served on city council, and also I'm a small business owner. So number one, if you want to run a business, you have to be open to going out there cold calling, talking about yourself, letting them know what your business is, meeting, and you just have to go in there with an open mind. And so it gave me, I think, a lot of confidence to at least to take that. But having the opportunity to, when I was council member, when I was mayor, going out there and again saying, what are your concerns? And sitting there and listening to them. And I think that's where local government really helps, because it's nonpartisan. You know what? You are literally there representing the entire city. It's not about your party. It's about making sure you have good policy that's going to benefit every single person there. And I think that sometimes lacks up in Sacramento. And you can tell when someone had local government, because they've had to deal with the state. They've seen the overreach that the state can do and how it can affect the whole makeup of their city. What can be built, what can't be built, the mandates, the cost that's now coming down. And when you have that understanding, you think twice about supporting a bill or hopefully making amendments to a bill that's going to hurt those that you're, in your own community. But those that don't have that experience, or maybe haven't had a business, don't know what it's like to have to sign a paycheck. And when you're putting mandates on those that have small businesses, 80% of our businesses are small businesses in this state. It's not the big corporations where they like to push. And we are supplying jobs to millions of people. And what are the repercussions if you're going to put a regulation or raise fees for a small business owner? It's going to be very tough for them either to stay here, to increase their business and employ more people. And it's important that people understand the other side and also what's going to happen afterwards.
You have served a long time on the city council, and then now you're in the assembly.
Yeah, I just finished 4 years.
4 years, right? 4 years in the assembly, and then you have done 8 years. This is the 8 years in city council, right? How about your family? Is it and the city council? I'm sure that the pay is not for the pay, and you have to spend many hours, right? 30, 40 hours a week. It's a full-time job without the pay, and kind of essentially somewhat of a volunteer role.
It is a volunteer role.
And how about your family? What's been like for your family?
Well, I can tell you this. I have my husband and I have my dog, and his business, hospitality. So he deals with the public. He goes through the ups and downs, through recessions and good times. But he understood how great the city was. And when I said, "Hey, I've been asked to run for city council," he's like, "Well, I'm never going to see you," and and then he realized, going, "You know what you're doing is worth, the time that I'm going to have to sacrifice being with you." And so I'm extremely blessed to have an incredible cheerleader in my side always. And, you talk about when you're working locally, we made $350 take home every month. So it was less than $4,000. especially when you had a business.
Less than 400, right?
Yeah, or 4,000 over the year.
4,000 over a year. Yeah. Okay, 4,000 a year.
And we didn't have any benefits. Different cities are differently. And so you did it because you wanted to. And that's what I think was important. You weren't running for the money. And what was beneficial for me, even though I lost money when it came to my business because I was spending more time because I got involved in every committee I could, going to the state, working with the county. But that's really what I did it for that role in city council. It wasn't to go somewhere else, but it gave me so much information and I learned so much that when the opportunity came and I had termed out, I had a lot of knowledge that I could take. I wasn't just going in there, not knowing a lot of issues. So that was very beneficial for me, but it's tough. People don't realize that when you're up at the state, we start our session January and we just finished at the end of August. And you fly up every Monday, you live up there, and you come back on Thursdays. So, you do a lot of FaceTime at night, but you're busy. You're in committees, you're going to events in the evening, and you pretty much go home, and get ready for the next day and look at your committees. And then you come home and, it's like, hey, honey, but I have my district, and that's where my time is, and my district is Orange County and San Diego, so I'm in a car, going to chamber events, going and speaking to town halls, letting them know what's happening in their district, and again, their issues and the concerns. And so probably one of the most unselfish people I know that has said, I get it, and then you have the campaigns where it's, your head's down and you don't see them. So come November, I usually have November in a little bit, but you don't always have that support. And I wouldn't be up there if I didn't have his support and the support of those that I represent. So thank you, honey.
So you made a lot of sacrifice, right? The pay was not there.
Right.
Was it worth it?
100%. Yeah, I wouldn't trade it for the world. And, I just believe that, I've been put in this place. I thank my God of, following where he wants me to go. And I find when you just, let the doors open, that's so much better than trying to force something or saying, oh, I'm going to do this and this and this and this. Be in the moment, be where you're at. When I was when I was serving in city council, that's where I was. And when I'm up there, I'm also thinking of what good policy can we do to help the issues that are back in the city, and I would do it all over again. I sometimes pinch myself going, how did I even get the opportunity to do this? And it's not work to me. And that's where I think, my passion comes through. Because you get that a lot going, why would you go up there? What can you do? And you're like, you know what, you can get a lot done. It's endless what good you can get done. But you have to make sure that you're listening to, to the Californians and what their issues really are. Focus on those issues and making things better for them, making life so that they can stay in this incredible state, making it affordable, making it safe, making their kids' education, should have the highest standards. And that's my focus, is how do I make California better? Bottom line.
So you have dedicated a lot of your time to public service. What recommendations do you have for younger people that want to get into public office?
I love talking to kids in high school. I love talking to college kids because what they're going through right now is something that we never had to go through. And what I'm finding is that they have a lot of loss. They don't have hope. And to me, that's the saddest thing there is. And so I go out, and again, voting is important. And right now, if you don't have hope, what are you voting for? And so to me, I go on and I let them know, going, you know what, get involved. You know what, you don't need to have labels. It doesn't matter. You don't have to pick a party. But what's important to you? And let's work together. You know what, and we can get things done. But you have to be able to instill hope into our youth. And so I love doing mentoring. And so I will go ahead and, I invite people to come and meet with me. We have internships up at Sacramento, but I also am working on a workshop to be able to have, young men, young women come forth. And I'm just going to talk about the opportunities there are in government and how they can change their city that they grew up in, how they can make a difference, because they can make a difference. And I think once they see that, you know what, there actually is that opportunity, they get excited. And that's what makes them want to learn more, and that's what gets them out to make sure that they're voting on the right policy and voting for the right people that are actually putting them first. And I think that that's really one of the new things I'm taking on, because they deserve everything that we've had. And I won't give up on them, and I think they need to realize we aren't giving up on you, and there's a bright future for you. And start learning about government, because like Sid is, all these things, affordability, that's affecting them as young people, cost of school, all of these things, again, are policy. They can get involved, they can start, reaching out to others, and we can put policy together and make a difference. And so that's kind of, it's one of my passions that I'm reaching out for, is letting them know that their voice makes a difference. But you know what, they have to have hope and have their voice so that they can vote.
Laurie Davies, Assemblywoman from California. It was great to have you in California Insider.
Thank you again. I really appreciate the opportunity. Thanks.